For years, in fact since 1993, I've been trying to tell people that the internet is a direct marketing medium. And believe it or not, I don't think it was until 2000 that there was some glimmer in the minds of this industry that, gosh, golly, gee whiz, you know what? It is a direct marketing industry. Well, if the internet's a direct marketing industry, then it behooves us to know everything we can about direct marketing. And I don't want to steal any of Dan's secrets, but I think one of the things he's going to tell you, and I talked about this earlier, is the internet is this, and the larger direct marketing world is this. So remember we were talking about lead, traffic generation, conversion, and if you want more money to come out the end of that box, change and improve your traffic and your conversion. I don't know anybody on earth, and that includes all the books and all the seminars you can go to, who's got more practical, actionable stuff you can do to instantly convert the profitability of any business. I don't know anybody around. And it is with great pride and honor and joy that I introduce you and welcome my good friend Dan Kenedy.
Thank you, sir. Ken having me here, as those of you who know me would know, is sort of daring. As you probably know, I don't personally use email. I've never sent one, I've never received one, and I don't intend to. This technology can come and go, and I don't use a cell phone either. I'm not necessarily prejudiced against the internet. I'm just prejudiced against all technology. I've never had a good relationship with even mechanical objects. Early, when dictating equipment was a big deal, it was like new. I thought I would write by dictating rather than writing. And I went and bought I remember I went and bought a dictaphone. And these things were, I don't know, $1,000. And as I tried to talk into it, the thing would talk back and say, I know. And not too long ago, now the cars talk, as I'm sure you know. Bill Glazer, my platinum member, has got one of these whiz-bang cars. You get in it in a very soft, seductive, feminine voice. It says, hello, Bill, what can I do for you today? I went and bought one of those. Mine says, oh, you again? Trade me in. A lot of you are extremely enamored of email. Hey, I use it too. I mean, I don't use it personally, but we use it to sell stuff, But I have warnings for you. Let me tell you some recent things. You probably already know all this stuff, but it makes a point. Let's see. This is from a research publication I subscribe to. One in every 2.8, so call it 3. 1 in every 3 emails is spam, and 1 in 270 contains a virus. Unsolicited commercial email is near half of all emails sent, according to this research organization. Now 42%, up from 8% in 2001. It's something that was talked about this morning. But roughly 15% of all marketing messages did not get through to recipients' inboxes in the fourth quarter of 2002 because they were halted by internet service providers, correctly or incorrectly identifying them as spam, according to a survey by an email monitor. That's 15% not getting through. It's as bad as bulk mail. Right? It's why in direct mail, I beat up all my clients to mail first class. My clients don't use bulk mail because bulk mail don't get there. It's a false economy. And the illusion of email is it's free. Well, it is and it isn't. It's free unless 15% or more of it never gets there, and that's the 15% that would have produced all the business. And so what you lost is $10 million this month in order to save some stamps. No, that wasn't free. It just looked free because you didn't write a check to pay for it. You just got robbed by it, and you didn't feel it when it happened. Principles never change, not in anybody's lifetime. And so the principles of making a sale haven't changed since whoever the first person was who sold a round wheel to cavemen. Okay? The principles are the same, and I got news for you, they're not going to change, and no new media, certainly no new technology is ever going to change them. Selling is selling is selling is selling. In the infomercial business I had at one of the conventions, and I wouldn't have done this had I known the guy and his client with him. They brought these people over to introduce them to me. This is a very big New York ad agency who had started an infomercial division. And they came and they introduced them to me, and they excitedly told me, and again, had I known the client was standing there with them, I would have been more gentle, but they excitedly told me that to do their first infomercial, they had retained Francis Ford Coppola. For those of you that's the director, the Godfather, etc. And they were very excited about this. And I said, well, that's impressive. I said, but if I had a choice between Francis Ford Coppola doing my infomercial and an old broken down vacuum cleaner salesman in a three-way plaid reversible JCPenney suit with a lot of cigarette burns on it and 1 foot bigger than the other and a little bit of stubble on his chin, I'd take the vac guy any day of the week. He's going to be a whole lot less expensive than Francis Ford Coppola, but that's not the point. The point is he knows how to sell something. The other guy just knows how to put film in a can. And selling is what this is all about. Any nitwit can go build a website now. Okay? There's apparently software so brain dead simple, I could build a website. Okay? Just like any nitwit can run a video camera. Or there's some illusion that has occurred that now computers somehow make people into copywriters. And so everybody that's got a laptop thinks they're a copywriter. Well, the whole thing's about selling. It's not about the thing. So the principles of selling never change. And you could find a how to sell book from the 1900s and be well served by reading it. This is a book that was first published in 1937. It's called the Robert Collier All-Letter Book. And I assure you, everybody in here that's a top copywriter that really does a lot of really good direct response copy owns one of these and uses it as a cheat book on a regular basis because the principles that worked in 1937 in direct response, not only do they still work, by the way, they work even better today because they had to work then with none of the tools we have now. They had to get somebody to go get a postal money order and put it in an envelope, say no 800 number, let alone website to come by. So the tools never change. Or excuse me, the principles never change. The strategies rarely change. Nuanced differences. Iraq War looked a lot different than World War II, but they're both about the strategy of getting and controlling territory. The strategies don't change. The book, The Art of War, is every bit as valid to the guys running the deal today as it was before. The strategies rarely change. There are, as near as I can tell, some basic choices about websites that I want to comment on briefly. And what most people do, particularly not you guys, but people who are not direct response marketers at all, the dentist, the cosmetic surgeon, the restaurant, the butcher, baker, candlestick maker, they go to a web designer who sells them what I would call an online brochure. They do a pretty site, very elaborate, a lot of graphics, and a lot of places to leap around. Click here, click there, click there. So the person at the site's like a grasshopper on speed. You know, they're clicking here, they're clicking there, they're leaping all over the place, and you know, basically they get lost and exit is pretty much what happens. And so they build these brochure sites. Then there are catalog sites, right? These are they work like a catalog in print. And a lot of the catalog companies, that's what they've done. They've taken their print catalog and they've stuck it up on the web, basically, and they've got a catalog online. Then there's the sales letter site. And then there's what I would call taking a complete direct mail package, not just the sales letter, but the testimonial enclosure and the other scientific proof and the article reprint and all the stuff you would put in an envelope and figuring out how to turn that into a site. The brochure site is probably a mistake none of you would ever make. The catalog site has its place, but it has its place, the same place a catalog does in real life. And so here's the most important thing you should know about catalogs in mail order and direct marketing. They're very poor vehicles for acquiring new customers, for adding people to the herd. And Perry and I were talking about it on the break because he's got a client who's just married to the idea of catalogs. And he said what I imagine they've said to him, well, what about the sharper image? Well, let me tell you something about sharper image. The sharper image is current customer acquisition activity, getting new customers, is all centered around single product mailings, not catalogs. The most recent thing that they found that works for them is the whiz-bang air filter thing. You've all seen it, right? And so now they got a winner, and they're riding it. There's a television infomercial. There's a direct mail, an enveloped campaign, a multi-piece, sales letter, brochure, testimonials, a complete direct mail campaign selling that product and only that product. There's credit card statement stuffers selling that product. There's package inserts selling that product. There's postcards selling that product. I haven't looked, but I would presume, because he's a smart guy, there's undoubtedly a website selling nothing but that product, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're using a single product in what we call solo direct mail, solo product offer, in order to acquire their customers. The message is the same, whether you're online or offline. If you want to acquire customers and you want to do it most efficiently, you do it with a super strong, single-focused offer. You don't do it with a pick one, a wander around in my store, in my catalog, and choose one. And I hope you caught it. He said very few internet marketers ever send a sequence. Well, see, sequencing, first notice, second notice, third notice. It's where I learned it. I first figured it out, and I teach my magnetic marketing models, a 3-step sequence, 15 days apart, each one clearly referring to the previous one that was sent. And where I learned that was from the collection business. And the collection industry has been using it as long as there was a collection industry. It's the basic Dunning letter sequence. I learned it in a year when I was personally and corporately bankrupt and I was getting a lot of mail, all from creditors. And having a lot of time on my hands, I noticed a pattern, which I know none of you have seen. So it's first notice, second notice, third notice, roughly 15 days apart. And each one clearly referring to the previous one. No mystery that they had written to you before. And I reasoned if that stuff sent to people like me who had no money, demanding money and making no offer, somehow got anybody to give them money. Surely it would work better if you used it on people who had money and you offered them something. Well, look, it turns out it's like the most reliable marketing model ever. Ever. It's as reliable as the day is long. And is a big thumb rule, if you want it, whatever you get from the first one, you're going to get at least that much again from number 2 and 3 added together. Sometimes you're going to get an ascending multiple. However, here we are with this quote, quote, new media of the internet, and hardly anybody's using it. Why? Well, because this media is different. No, it's not. 2 last things you need to know. If you want to do 2Pay, you can. Just write 2Pay on the form, and we'll charge your credit card in 2 monthly installments instead of all at one whack. And the last thing you need to know is you got 2 guarantees. I made a decision 25 years ago when I first started to sell my own material, never wanted to be at a birthday party, bar mitzvah, convention, on a street corner or in a mall, and see somebody coming towards me and know they're coming to whine and moan. You know, I'm not your stuff, and life's too short. They're coming to me now. They're coming, because they think I'm Elvis, or it's good news. So here's the deal. You got 60 days unconditional. Get all the stuff, Play with it, start to use it, dig into it. If any time in 60 days you don't think you've got necessary, essential, and useful tools, pack it up, send it back. We give you all your money back. You don't have to fill out a form. You don't need an access code number. You don't need to email us because you can't. Nobody's going to ask you any questions. We stopped caring a long time ago. Okay? You don't want to keep it, just send it back. We'll refund every penny you pay. Keep it past 2 months. I'll ride with you for 10 more months. 12 months from now, if you'll look me in the eye with integrity on paper, tell me you implemented at least 3 things, any 3 things, out of the whole mess. You implemented 3 things. You didn't make at least 10 times your investment. I'll buy it all back 12 months from today. Now, you should know, on average, because I make this guarantee with everything I sell, we buy back about 6% of everything we sell. So those are your odds. 6% of the people are so completely dysfunctional. Okay? And we buy it back. But 94% of them not only keep what they bought, but as the room attests to, become inner circle members, get the newsletter, in some cases become customers for life. There are people in here who made it abundantly clear they've been with me for 20 years, their father's been with me for 20, they don't go away. So the odds are in your favor. This is going to be really, really good for you. This is a general entrepreneurial principle that also applies to the web and TV. The worst number in business is 1 of anything. 1 product that's responsible for an inordinate amount of the revenue. In business-to-business marketing, 1 account that's responsible for an inordinate amount of the revenue. 1 employee who is virtually indispensable. Being dependent on 1 media. If you allow yourself to be dependent on 1 media, you're asking for waking up one morning and having no business at all. Here's been the evolution of every cheap and highly productive media that's come along. It's invented. We marketing people get a hold of it. We figure out how to make a ton of dough with it. And then the regulatory community attacks it and creates a crap load of laws to try and keep us from making a lot of money with it. And they either kill it or they never give up. In the case of telemarketing, they haven't been able to completely kill it, but they never give up. Every day there's a whole committee in Congress and there's state attorney generals and there's the FTC all having meetings trying to figure out what the next thing they can do to make it more difficult to make money with telemarketing. Same thing with fax. Going to be the same thing with this. Now here's the piece of good news. What it's done is it's opened up the greatest opportunity ever. And the opportunity is also an answer to this question. Ken said a lot of people have been asking this question. We're seeing rising lead costs. What do we do about rising lead costs? Now, here's what you don't do. You don't use the cheapest media available to you, and only the cheapest media. If you do that, your business is going to be very, very vulnerable to having that media taken away from you, and you're going to be clueless about what to do next. No, you use all the media that's available to you. You dollar cost average the cost of lead and cost per sale, and you adjust your economics to support a full matrix of media. Now, 90% of all information marketers never get what I just said to you. And at some point in their businesses, they suffer mightily as a result. Many of them recently because of the fax situation. Taken away from them, and they're all standing around looking like deer in headlights. What do we do now? Because they were overly dependent on the 1 cheap media. You want to use every media that's available to you, dollar cost average, and then adjust your economics to support the matrix of media. If you do that, you are able to continue almost uninterrupted no matter what happens to any 1 media. Now, the opportunity. The greatest opportunity created by the whole internet explosion is direct mail. There's a thing called paper. You may remember it. Okay? Direct mail is the only media, of all the media we marketers use, where the amount of legislation, litigation, Regulation really hasn't changed much in decades. The reason for that, the government owns the media. They want the money. And so they grit their teeth as we use it because they need the dough. Direct mail ain't going anywhere. And the mailbox actually got uncluttered. Thanks to everybody thinking, don't need to do it anymore, we'll just use email. There's less competition in the mailbox. It's helped those of us who do direct mail. The other thing is when you integrate offline with online, this is not new, by the way, but it's a favorite of mine. This is Amazon.com. Our conclusion is that although they say snail mail, derisively, although snail mail is more expensive as a marketing vehicle, it reaches our customers in ways we can't otherwise reach, it is definitely something going to continue implementing. Amazon actually mailed more print catalogs last year than over 100 of the major catalog companies in America. This is an article from Forbes, some company called ebags.com. I assume they sell bags, one would hope, wouldn't you? They sent out 250,000 print catalogs for the first time. Customers who received both email offers and a catalog bought 61% more than those who just received email. Okay? Integration. Lead generation online, follow up offline. Lead generate offline, drive them online. Use them both, put them together. You will make a ton more money. The second thing I'd like to say to you about this is that a lot of people believe, and a lot of people still believe, that they'll admit that the internet is media, but then they will argue that it is somehow different from other media. And I must tell you the differences are nuance small, and the similarities are gigantic. And everybody has made this argument about every other media as well. Small business owners devoutly believe, for example, that the Yellow Pages, which is a media, is different from all other media. The proof of that is go compare their Yellow Pages ads to the ads that they do in the newspaper, the ads that they do in the magazines. There's almost no similarity. They do a totally different kind of advertising in the Yellow Pages. Most of them do very, very dumb, stupid, ignorant advertising in the Yellow Pages. It tends to be virtually an enlarged, very expensive business card. And the few that get it and do direct response ads in the Yellow Pages, just like they would do in a newspaper, kick butt. Okay? It's just another media. You don't change the way you play the game just because you're in a different stadium. Okay? The game is the game is the game. Doesn't matter. And so everybody wants to make the argument, television. The argument with infomercials has been made over and over and over again that somehow this media is different. And the desert floor is littered with companies that have lost fortunes under the insistent assumption that because it's TV, they must entertain in the half hour, not just pitch. And so big companies and small companies have tried to do entertaining infomercials. Apple Computer did one that was done as a sitcom. You may not have seen it because after they spent $3 million on it, it only aired for one weekend because, of course, it flopped like there was no tomorrow. I could give you example after example of this kind of idiocy. The infomercial is nothing but a sales letter with moving pictures. That's all it is, nothing more, nothing less, and it has to be built that way. And so all media is pretty much interchangeable in the way that you approach it in terms of being effective. What makes a print ad work, makes a sales letter work, makes a Valpak coupon work, makes a radio commercial work, makes a TV infomercial work, makes a website work. And again, when you buy this, if you can get yourself to accept this, two good things happen. One is you have an enormous advantage over 99% of everybody else who's trying to make money with the internet, because they're laboring under a very false assumption that you have liberated yourself from. The second really good thing that happens is, as Ken said and as Yannick said, you start to focus on direct marketing and focus on direct response marketing instead of focusing on the tool you're using to do it with. And that's a very, very good thing because you'll get much better results. But media is not a business. And it's important to understand the difference. And I'll give you two analogies. The television infomercial, which Alex also mentioned. I've worked in the television infomercial field since 1987. The very first Guthy-Renker infomercial for Think and Grow Rich, which was the first show ever to use a celebrity host, and which began the up the ante in that industry. And the last time that I figured it up directly, I've been involved in selling over $300 million worth of merchandise with television infomercials. That doesn't count back end, that's just front end. A whole lot of people thought they were in the infomercial business. And there used to be a trade association called the National Infomercial Marketing Association for people who were, it's now changed its name because a whole lot of people found out it's not a business and they all disappeared off the planet. They all went broke. They thought it was a business. The survivors, there were at one time hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of companies, small, medium, and very large, who thought infomercials were a business. And there's like 5 of them who've survived. They're all gone. It wasn't as public a bloodbath as was the .com thing, but it was similar. And the only people who are around of any substance figured out it wasn't a business, it's a media. And so, for example, if you analyze, my friend, the Guthy-Renker business today, the Guthy-Renker business is really a cosmeceutical company. Skincare, vitamins, acne treatments, hair grower, stuff that goes down the sink that's used up every month by one means or another that is sold on continuity. And the infomercial is the primary, but not the only means of acquiring those customers. And so they're really a skincare, cosmetic, and vitamin company. That's what they are. With occasional notable exceptions like a piece of Pilates equipment or a set of Tony Robbins tapes. But basically, they're a consumer products company. And they're not in the infomercial business. They use the infomercial as media. In the speaking business, which there is no such thing, but all 5,000 people I know who are speakers always talk about the speaking business. It's not a business. If it is, it's like the world's worst business ever because it's all manual labor. It doesn't fit any definition, any sane definition of what a business is. It's just media. And the few speakers who figured that out, as I did, have used it as a vehicle to become fairly well-to-do, but the others don't. They're living paycheck to paycheck just like a factory worker. Those of us who got it realized it's a media. And it's a good media to acquire customers and build a herd. And the herd that you saw when everybody raised their hands here, which is like well over half the room, I think, raised their hands for Inner Circle members. Most of them came, not all of you, but most of you came as a result of me speaking. So I'm the ad media that got you into the herd. This is the same thing. The internet's a media. And if you think of it as that, then a lot of other possibilities and smart activities open up to you because now it fits into a matrix of media as opposed to being a business in and of itself. And if you want to get maximum dollars from the fewest number of customers, here's the last thing I'll tell you. I'm a real small numbers guy. Now, there's lots of ways to skin this cat. You can have 40,000 customers, as I did at one point. You can have 400,000 customers. You can have 4 million customers. Right? Or you can have 1,000 really, really good ones. Right? Even electronically, the more you got, usually, the more infrastructure you wind up having to have, the more hassle you have. My personal preference is a small numbers business. I like customers that have annual value of $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, not annual values of $10, $20, $30, $40, $50. You won't get those values electronically alone. Next great direct response principle, the war is won or lost at the headline. It's a truth. It's a fundamental truth about direct response. And the brief period of time that I had a relatively traditional ad agency, and I had copywriters working for me. However, I just had this happen not too long ago, too. Somebody would bring an ad for me to see, and the headline would make no sense. And I would say, headline doesn't make any sense. I would say, yeah, but if you read the ad, the headline's really clever. Okay? You got to get it doesn't work in that order. You don't get, here's what the vac guy with the big foot and the plaid suit knows. You don't get to demo the vac if what you say during the 30 seconds when you have your foot wedged in the door doesn't get you invited in. Right? He knows that. People who graduate from Notre Dame and go to work at McCann Erickson, they don't. Right? So they're writing headlines that don't work. Right? The headline has to be right for everything else to work. It's at least 50% of the war. And pretty much all the rules about headlines are nonsense. For example, there's a rule that says a headline should never be longer than X number of words, and you'll hear people tell you this, and some of my most successful headlines are god-awful long. Okay, they should be long, and I also have two that have made a lot of money that are one-word headlines. It's not how long they are, it's, you know, what they say. I'd like to give you a useful tool to take with you. This is the headline test. And this doesn't vary by media. Okay? The headline test is thus. If you took the headline and separated it from everything else, put only the headline and a response mechanism in a classified ad in a publication that would likely be read by your target audience, would anybody call you? So if you took the headline and then said, call 1-800-WHATS-THIS for more information, and that was your ad, and you stuck it in, if it's a general audience, and you stuck it in USA Today, would you get any calls? Nothing else around it. No other copy, no slogan, no brand name, no logo, no nothing. The headline and an 800 number, does it work? If it doesn't, the safe approach, there are ways to violate this, but you don't need to know them. The safe approach is don't use it. Go back to the keyboard and do some work. Direct response principle, copy is king. And this is true electronically as well, as a lot of people are learning, and most of the examples that were shown to you this morning demonstrate it's all about the copy. And by the way, you must never let the graphic people get a hold of it and make it pretty, because they will ruin it. They're not quite as dangerous as attorneys, but they're close. And you got to keep an eagle eye on them all the time. They'll clean up the type, they'll straighten the paragraph ends, they'll justify the copy, they'll do the most amazing things aesthetically and graphically to ruin good copy. The only purpose of graphics is to make it more likely that the reader will read the copy. That's it. It's the only purpose. It doesn't have any other purpose. And so you can't let it have any other purpose. Is what we're doing here visually going to make the copy read more? If yes, it wins. If no, it doesn't. Very simple. Now, that's not how graphics people, and certainly it's not how web designers approach their art. By the way, that's another word like creativity. You hear them talking about art, run like hell. Okay? There's a place for art. You know, there's a real good art museum right here in town. There's a place for it, but not with what we're doing. Okay? It's all about the copy, which means you've got to learn probably to write copy. Most of you are not going to have businesses big enough or be willing to write the checks necessary to have really good copywriters do all your copy. Maybe your main customer acquisition piece, yes, and maybe that would be smart, but not all of it. You're going to have to be able to do that for yourself. I mean, really good copywriters in my compensation league are going to be hitting you for $15,000 to $50,000 to $70,000 to write a sales letter plus royalties. Well, that's okay if you're only going to do one for your entire life, you know, or one a year, or you're going to go do $50 million a bit. But, you know, if you're going to do like one a week, you're probably not going to be real happy writing those checks. So this is what you got to get good at. And if you have a choice, by the way, between knowing how to do some of the technical stuff yourself or working on getting this right, work on this. It's where all the money is. Right? Our kind of copy is salesmanship in print. Brings us back to the VAC guy. It's not advertising. And it's very important not to mimic advertising. The last thing you ever want to do is mimic anything you see big companies doing in advertising. There's a reason for that. Their agenda is different than yours is. Their agenda is very different. They have their stockholders to pacify. They have their board of directors to pacify. They have Wall Street to pacify. They have their bank to pacify. They have their vendors to pacify. They have some highfalutin association they belong to pacify. They have their lawyers to pacify. They have the CEO's buddies at the country club to pacify. And after all that's satisfied, like number 212 on the agenda list is an ad that might make money. Right? And layered over that list is their ad agency's list of priorities, which start with winning awards and building portfolios so that they have something to show to get the next dumb client after they lose the one they got. Okay? And then like number 8 on their list is create an ad that might bring in some money. All right? Well, your agenda, I think, probably number 1 on the list is make money. So you can't ever copy anything coming from an entirely different agenda than yours is. If anything, you look at it as what not to do. So you can't copy anything you see. You got to ask yourself, what's their agenda? What's their priorities? What's driving their decision making? What's causing them to do what they do the way they do before I decide I'm going to copy it? So what we do is salesmanship in print. For you, in print on the screen. Yannick made a very important point. Just because you see it on a screen, this thing's much closer to a sales letter than it is to television. Just as, in fact, is the infomercial closer to a sales letter than it is to real TV. Whatever now real TV is. Right? But it's closer to a sales letter brought to life. Right? So we're doing salesmanship in print, regardless of how the print is ultimately delivered. And that means we're doing sales. So get that you're doing selling through media. You're not doing advertising. The rules of advertising, the rules of selling are what apply here. A real good book, by the way, is Zig's Secrets to Closing the Sale. Now, that book's written for salespeople. But see, that's what, like it or not, you are if you're going to make a lot of money in direct marketing. Now, the greased chute. Mm-hmm. Understanding that we're doing salesmanship through media. Think about a physical sales presentation. First of all, how many of you in here have sold anything successfully, nose to nose, toes to toes, face to face? Okay, good. Good. Now think back to that experience when you did it and think if this is how you would do it. You sit down across from the prospect at the kitchen table or at their desk, whether you're selling to consumers or B2B, doesn't make any difference, and you whip out a menu. And you say, why don't you choose what you want me to talk about in the order you want me to talk about it? And that's how I'll deliver the sales presentation. Would you do that if you were selling face-to-face? I kind of doubt it. I can assure you it won't work. Right? You wouldn't let them, you don't let them stop you in the middle of the presentation and have you, oh, I don't want to hear any more about that. Tell me about this. No, you start them at the beginning of a process, an organized, structured sales presentation that you have practiced and rehearsed and memorized and know works, and you send them kind of down a greased chute. Right? And there's very little deviation. If you're a real good pro, at some point in time, you start maybe to deal with their questions and objections, and there's some flexibility there, but it's late in the process. It's not early in the process. Well, If you understand that, then you have to move that to whatever tools that you use. You can't now throw that out when you're selling in media rather than selling face-to-face. You can't let them control the sales process. It would be, incidentally, and I heard very little that I would profoundly disagree with, but, I would wrestle Alex over that one. If I heard him right, he thinks the prospect controls the process. They damn well better not. David Sandler said, if you don't have a system for selling, you are at the mercy of everybody else's system for buying, and their system for buying sucks. Now, he didn't say it exactly that way, but nevertheless, he's right. Okay? See, most people, they were never trained to make a decision. They don't know how to make decisions. There's a reason why a theater's only got 2 exits. If it's got 3 and there ever is a fire, they're all burning to death because they're all just going to be befuddled. I don't know, do we go over here, do we go over there, I don't know, we die. That'll be the deal. All right? So if you're relying on them to run the show, you're in trouble. They don't know how to run the show. That's why, we're gonna let them buy cars the way they want to buy cars. Remember that Saturn deal, which has long since gone out the window. You go to a Saturn dealership, it's exactly the same deal as going to any other kind of dealership. You know why? Because they discovered people didn't know how to buy cars. They knew how to look at cars. They knew how to test drive cars. They didn't know how to buy a car. And so they left the Saturn dealership, went next door where somebody knew how to sell a car, and he got their money. You got to run the show. You can't let them run the show. I love these websites where at the end of a sales pitch, there's 412 different things you can click. Here, choose from 412 things to do next. Hey, these people are having trouble choosing a shirt to wear in the morning. I mean, that's if you have employees and they're always late to work, that's like one of the reasons. It's that extra 15 minutes standing in front of the closet, just befuddled. Well, hey, see, Thomas Watson had it right at IBM. White shirt, black tie, okay? No choices. They get dressed faster. Guy opens a closet, he's got 20 white shirts, 20 black ties. He's getting to work on time, okay? You got a blue one and a pink one, he's screwed. He don't know. Right? So you got to control the process with a grease shoot. Testimonials, we already talked about. Well, that's because it doesn't matter what the media is. Testimonials are the most powerful, the most useful, and the most underused sales tool on earth. Again, the media doesn't change the rule. And the rule is what someone else says about you is at least 1,000 times more persuasive than what you say about you, even if you're 1,000 times more articulate. And so you can't overuse them. Most people underuse them. And so to build a complete sales package, you would use them a lot. Most people haven't carried that over to the web. Listen, irresistible offer. Okay? Direct marketing, direct selling is all about building an irresistible offer. The old marketers, all the way back to the Robert Colliers of the world. By the way, I'm going to tell everybody, make this book available to you free before we're done. All the way back to Robert Collier, to more contemporary, to a guy like Joe Sugarman, who was selling in direct response before you could pick up an 800 number and use a credit card. They had to build irresistible offers because the hurdle they had to get people over. I mean, they had to clip the coupon, go get a check or a postal money order, address an envelope, put a stamp on it, tote it to the post office. A lot of chances for that to fall apart. So, the offer had to be irresistible. Well, it still does. See, because what John Carlton, great copywriter, you should study John's stuff, calls the somnambulant sloth. Visualize your prospect as this giant somnambulent sloth oozing all over the couch, from whom it will take an enormity of effort to even reach the phone. You got to do, hey, I was just telling them at lunch, here's how bad it's got. 2 baseball stadiums now, the Yankees and I forget the other one, have instituted a new system where you can call the snack bar on your cell phone and have them deliver the food to you where you're sitting. Okay? Getting the fat, lard butt up off the bleacher and walking the 50 feet to the snack bar is now too much. Okay? It's got to be brought to them. So you're going to have 20,000 people going, feed me, bring me more nachos. You know? Well, look, they didn't do this out of the goodness of their heart. They did this, the only logical reason for this to have occurred is snack bar sales are down. And they figured out the people are too damn lazy to come and get it, so we got to take it to them. This is your customer. I mean, so it takes something incredible to motivate them to act. You can't be doing these plain vanilla offers. I mean, it takes a terrific direct response offer. Second most important thing to the headline. So it's really like the beginning and the end of the process. If you get them down into what I call the red zone, the football analogy, if you get them down into the red zone and then you drop the ball, you don't have a powerful, compelling, irresistible offer and a real clear call to action, you wasted everything else you did. Direct response is all built around that and linked to it, urgency. Yannick said, it'd be nice to have expire dates, but they're not necessary. I beg to differ. Okay. They're essential. Nothing happens on earth without a deadline. I mean, it just doesn't. If it wasn't for deadlines, if deadlines didn't exist, how much would you get done? Nothing. Me too. We're all the same. You know, we learned it. When did you get your paper done? The night before it was due, right? Didn't matter when they assigned it. Night before it was due. Okay? We're now, however old we are, you know, I'm 80, you're 50, whatever, we're still doing the same deal. Night before it's due. That's when we're doing it. And so if you don't create urgency, which means you got to have deadlines, you got to have penalties for not meeting deadlines, and you got to have incentives for meeting deadlines. If you're not doing that, you're really not doing direct response. It's a key element that differentiates direct response from traditional advertising, is the expiration of the offer. And if you haven't already discovered it, if you're like new to direct response, if you do it right, here's how you know you do it right. There's always a flurry of order activity the day after the deadline. And if they talk to you, if they call, if they get a human being, if they do business that way, they all have a dog and pony story for why they missed the deadline. Because they believe them, which they should, and now they call up with their story. Oh, I'm sorry I'm a day late, but you know, my dog peed on it and I had to dry it out with a hairdryer, and you know, I mean, they got a story, right? And they tell that story in order to, then you know you got it right. Ben, you're all the way in the back, and I didn't arrange to have a microphone run, but Ben does deadlines all the time with every offer. Am I right? You do it over a weekend, and every Monday, I mean, he's nodding. There's a flurry of activity from people cheating the deadline. Well, why? Because they waited. They looked at it. They set it aside. They looked at it. They set it aside again. They worried over it. They did, you know, and they waited until the last picking minute. And if there wasn't any deadline, they never would have responded at all. Got to have it. It's a big difference, but it's a defining factor between direct response and not doing direct response.